Let's take a tour of the new toolbox / tools panel in Adobe Photoshop CS3, and it's located on the left side of our interface by default. Now, the first thing you might want to do by pure instinct is to tear it off and move it. And you'll notice that you can't do that if you click on the dock region, which is this gray bar. What you can do if you want to reposition it is click on the title bar and click and drag it, and now you've torn it off from its dock. You can always put it back to the position by clicking and dragging it until you see a blue outline like so, and then you let go and it's back in its dock. If you want to display the single column, all you have to do is click this double arrow, and now you have the single column. But if you're working on a small monitor or on a laptop computer, or if you're recording, for example, like I am, on a smaller resolution, then I won't be able to see those tools. So once again, I click on these arrows and boom, I'm back to the legacy version. Now, the tools are divided in sections. Up here we have our selection tools, and you see that they are in their little own cubicles here. So we have our selection tools, and these tools allow you to make selections so that you can manipulate pixels, or you can move things around, or you can select things. For example, on this particular image of this tree, or these trees, what I can do is grab a marquee, and I can click and drag to lay out where I would like Photoshop to enable some kind of operation. For example, I can now add a filter to whatever is inside this boundary. So let me go ahead and cancel that. I can also move things around. Let me deselect, and I can also show you that if I go to a new layer, we'll talk about layers later on, I can draw a marquee, and I can fill that marquee with a color. And when I deselect it by pressing Command or Control D, and I move over to the next tool, the Move tool, I can click and move that around because it's on its own layer. I don't have to select it first. But if I want to select that particularly, I can grab the Magic Wand tool, click inside that object, select it, and then once again grab a Move tool and move it around. Let me press Command or Control D to deselect that, and I can also hide that layer. We'll talk more about how to do that later on, layers and all that kinds of fun stuff. Another tool I can use is the Lasso tool, and there are quite a few different tools in this category. By the way, let me just quickly show you that whenever you see this little downward arrow in the corner of a tool, that means if you hold your mouse down, more tools will magically appear for you. So with the Lasso tool, what I can do is I can draw out a shape on my own, and then I can do what I want to. I can once again apply a filter to it. For example, I can go back to filter, and I can put a blur in there, and that will only affect whatever's in that region. Let me go ahead and undo that. I can also fill it with color, or whatever I need to. I can also choose to once again choose one of the selection tools, such as the Quick Selection tool, which we'll spend some great time on, and the Magic Wand tool to select specific colored pixels. So I can click with the Magic Wand tool to choose pixels that are similar in color. And we're going to spend more time on how the Magic Wand tool works with the tolerance and all that stuff later on. We also have the Crop tool, which allows us to indicate which parts of the region of the area, or rather the image, we want to get rid of and keep. So we can delete portions of the image, and we can keep portions of the image. So that's really what the Crop tool allows you to do. Over here we have our Slice tools, and the Slice tools allow us to cut up an image so that they can be used in a web application, and we'll talk about that later on. The next section down here allows us to edit the image in some way. For example, we can heal parts of the image, get rid of blemishes and that kind of thing with our healing tools, which are indicated by the picture of the band-aid. We can also use the Brush tool to paint, the Pencil tool to paint as well. So we can grab a brush, I can increase the size of said brush, and I can paint on my image. I also have some cloning tools, so I can clone certain parts of the image, and we're going to spend some time on that as well. And we also have the art history brushes, and we'll talk about these guys as well. We can paint backwards in time with these. We also can paint, believe it or not, with the eraser tool, or we can simply erase mistakes with the eraser tool as well. And we also have the gradient tools and the paint bucket tools, so you can fill in shapes or you can apply gradients. And these tools are very cool. These are the blur tool, the smudge and sharpen tools, and we can manipulate how pixels are arranged by moving them around. And we can also darken, color, and desaturate or saturate images with these tools here, the dodge, burn, and sponge tools. And we're going to talk about those guys in depth as well. Over here we have the pen tool, which allows us to create our own paths. And once again, yes, I will talk about how to use this tool, which is pretty much the heart and soul of Photoshop when it comes to drawing your own paths for creating all kinds of effects. We can create text by using the type tool, and sometimes it takes a moment or two to load, and it's going to load all my fonts and all that kinds of fun stuff. But we can type logos, or we could type text right inside of Photoshop. And as you see, we have all of our options for our type tools, such as choosing a font, And once again, we also have some other tools here. So as you see, I left that path on the screen on purpose because we can select the entire path using the path selection tool. And I can click on my path and I can move it around. Or I can choose to manipulate the path by choosing the direct selection path tool. And I can click on a point and move that point around or change how that point works. Very handy. I can also choose to draw with vector shapes. This is very handy as well for creating all kinds of nice effects. Last but not least, we have some utility tools. And what we can do with this guy is create notes in our actual Photoshop file so that we can tell somebody what to do with a particular file. And we can get fancy and leave an audio annotation. And here we have our eyedropper tool, our color sampler tool, and our ruler tool, which allows us to clone colors and that kind of thing. We also have our hand tool. What we can do is move our image around in our document window. We can of course achieve the same exact thing by holding down the space bar on the keyboard. We have our zoom tool, which obviously will zoom in, and when you hold down the Alt or Option key, will zoom out in increments. If you want to go back to 100%, just double click right here on the zoom tool and kaboom, you're back to 100%, or you're filling out the whole image window with that image. We have our swatches, we have our foreground color, our background color, and the ability to swap between the two with this arrow here. And we also have our quick mask mode, which allows us to paint our own custom mask. And last but not least is a new way of working in Photoshop, which is our screen modes. So we can go from standard screen mode, maximize screen mode, full screen mode with menu bar, and full screen mode without menu bar. And I'm going to spend a good chunk of time on these tools as well. So once again, the tools are located on this side of the screen, and what you can do with these tools is pretty much access functions that will help you to create and manipulate your artwork in Photoshop CS3.